The film kicked off with a high-octane cold open. A woman was shown successfully stealing something from deep within the headquarters of the Albanian Mafia. Her clean getaway went south when she was spotted on her way to her car. A chaotic firefight erupted, which then spilled out onto the streets as a full-blown car chase. In a stroke of luck for law enforcement, 2 police officers happened to be staking out the Mafia headquarters from across the street. Seeing the action pop off, they immediately joined the pursuit, adding another layer of chaos to the dangerous situation. The story then shifted gears, introducing a trio of Londoners stuck in their own quiet ruts. First, there was Hugh, a brilliant IT expert working at a high-paying brokerage firm. Despite his professional success, his life felt empty. His social skills were so far below average that he had no friends to speak of. Then there was Marlon, a struggling actor who, after more than a decade in the business, had a pizza commercial as his highest achievement. His career was constantly sabotaged by his own biggest weakness, an uncontrollable urge to improvise during every single audition. Finally, there was Kat, their future instructor. She was a talented comedian, but her career had stalled out, leaving her to teach improv classes while her own students were getting scouted for TV shows. Pushing 40, she was feeling the pressure as all her friends were settling down with families and successful careers. Their paths finally crossed one afternoon when Hugh, desperate to learn how to make small talk, decided to stop by a comedy class just to observe. He was pleasantly surprised to find a room full of people who seemed to have the same social anxieties as him. His interest turned to active participation when the instructor, Kat, pulled him up to do an exercise on stage. It was in this moment that he first met Marlon, another student in the class, whose over-the-top energy was immediately apparent. All 3 of them were in the same boat, looking for a way to break out of the funk their lives had fallen into. That big break came after a particularly rough day for all of them. Hugh was once again ostracized at his office. Marlon was unceremoniously fired by his agent for having no real talent, and Kat had to stomach the news of another one of her students landing a major role in a comedy series. That night, after her class, Kat was approached at a bar by a detective named Billings. He had a strange proposition for her. He explained that the police were having trouble with undercover sting operations because their cops were too stiff and easily recognized by criminals. He needed people with real improvisation skills to pose as sellers or buyers in these stings, and he was willing to pay £200 per job. The catch was, he needed a team of 3. Confused but intrigued, Kat looked around the bar for potential recruits. The only people left were her 2 students, Hugh and Marlon, each sitting alone and looking just as dejected as she felt. She pitched them the insane offer. Marlon, who desperately needed the money now that he was unemployed, was in immediately. Hugh was more hesitant, but Kat managed to convince him by pointing out that having a secret life as an undercover police operative would give him some killer stories to finally break the ice with his colleagues at work. And just like that, the deal was struck. A lonely IT nerd, a failed actor, and a struggling comedian agreed to become a team of accidental undercover agents for the London police. For their first mission, the newly formed team was given what should have been a simple task: bust a local shopkeeper for selling counterfeit cigarettes. Before they went in, Detective Billings handed Kat a special cell phone to use as a wire, allowing him to listen in on the whole operation. The plan was simple, but it almost immediately went off the rails thanks to its eccentric new operatives. Marlon, the failed actor, got way too into his character, while Hugh, the IT nerd, was so nervous he could barely function. They went in first to scope the place out, followed shortly by Kat, who was supposed to be the steady hand guiding them. Things were shaky but stable, until the shopkeepers started to get suspicious, sensing that the 3 of them knew each other. Just as their cover was about to be blown, Kat jumped in with a brilliant bit of improvisation and managed to convince the seller they were legit. But with the fake cigarettes now on the counter, Marlon and Hugh, high on the thrill of the moment, decided to keep riffing, telling the seller they were looking for something a bit more interesting. This unexpected move led the seller to believe they were serious players, and he made them a new offer, a chance to buy a large quantity of high-grade narcotics. In an instant, their simple counterfeit sting had accidentally catapulted them into the world of big-league drug dealing. They were taken to a new location to meet the dealer, a man named Fly, who wasn't about to sell his product to just anyone. He began to grill them on their backgrounds, testing to see if they were cops. This was where Kat and Marlon's improv skills truly shone. They spun a wildly convincing tale on the spot, painting themselves as seasoned distributors for powerful, unnamed clients. Their story was so good that Fly was completely sold. The situation grew even more complicated with the arrival of the woman from the film's opening scene, who was revealed to be Fly's henchwoman. She delivered a bag full of the very drugs she had just stolen from the Albanian Mafia. To seal the deal, Fly dumped a pile of the product on the table and, as a final test, pressured the bookish, straight-laced Hugh to sample the goods. Just as Hugh was about to be forced to take another hit, the doors burst open and the place was stormed by the Albanian Mafia, who were there to reclaim their stolen property. The room became a tense standoff, a bloodbath just waiting to happen. But before a shot could be fired, Kat once again took center stage. In a move of sheer, audacious genius, she improvised, loudly declaring that the drugs didn't belong to Fly or the Albanians but to her. She announced that since narcotics were in short supply, she was putting the product up for auction to the highest bidder right then and there. Her performance was so commanding and believable that both armed crews were momentarily stunned into submission. She not only de-escalated a violent confrontation, but also ended up selling the stolen drugs back to the Albanian Mafia for twice their original price. The move saved everyone's skin and left Fly completely in awe, convinced that Kat, Marlon, and Hugh were some of the most professional and dangerous players he had ever met. He even offered them a future business collaboration before they parted ways. Back at police headquarters, Detective Billings was initially furious that the team had gone so far off script from the original mission. But as he processed what they had accomplished, his anger turned to sheer amazement. He explained that his own undercover officers had been trying and failing to get close to Fly's operation for 2 years. A feat this trio of misfits had managed in a single day completely by accident. Seeing a golden opportunity to crack a major case, Billings changed the terms of their deal. He asked them to continue their deep cover operation and take down Fly's entire syndicate. At first, Kat refused, but Billings knew just what to say. He promised that if they succeeded, they wouldn't just get paid. Their names would be all over the media and they would be hailed as public heroes. The team's new long-term objective was to get close to the drug dealer, Fly, and figure out the time and place of his next big smuggling operation. For security, Detective Billings was the only person in the department who knew their true identity. He reminded Kat to always have her wire active before going into any situation so he could monitor them and record evidence. But when the trio returned to base to get their assignment, they were thrown a curveball. Instead of being invited into a drug deal, Fly tasked them with a completely different job, acting as his muscle to collect a debt from an old man who owed him money. While Kat and Marlon chatted with Fly, a nervous Hugh found himself awkwardly trying to make small talk with his tough-as-nails right-hand woman, Shosh. Confused by the sudden change in plans, Kat relayed the situation to Billings, who told them to just improvise and roll with it, assuming their target was just some harmless old man. Forced to continue the mission, the three of them bravely broke into the home of their target, a man named Sagar. Marlon, the actor, immediately slipped into character, playing the part of a menacing thug with surprising conviction. His performance was so good that it inspired Hugh to try and get in on the act and look tough himself. His attempt, however, was a comical failure. He tried to smash a glass bottle for intimidation but couldn't break it, making the situation more awkward than threatening. The intimidation continued, with Marlon threatening to seriously harm the old man if he didn't pay up immediately. But instead of cooperating, Sagar revealed he wasn't as helpless as he looked and made a move for a knife hidden in his bag. Marlon managed to snatch it away just in time. Cornered and disarmed, Sagar decided to make a run for it. He bolted out of his house and directly into the street, where he was immediately struck and killed by a passing car. The entire incident happened so fast that the trio was left standing in stunned silence. After they snapped out of it, they managed to find the money they were sent to collect. Marlon had the presence of mind to snap a photo of the bloody scene to use as proof for Fly before they reported the accidental death to Detective Billings, who assured a worried Kat that she had nothing to fear since it was clearly just an accident. The official police investigation, however, took a very different view. When the detectives arrived on the scene, they were shocked when they identified the victim. Sagar wasn't just some old man in debt. He was a legendary and notoriously dangerous retired hitman with a long list of powerful victims to his name. The police immediately suspected that his death was a professional hit, not a random accident, and began a homicide investigation looking for 3 perpetrators who were reportedly seen fleeing the scene. It turned out that Fly had given them the job as an impossible test, never expecting them to actually succeed against the formidable cigar. When the trio returned with the money and photographic proof that they had taken care of him, Fly was completely blown away. He was now convinced that this unassuming group was a team of elite-level assassins who had managed to kill a legend. As a reward for their incredible work, he gave them half the money, and since it happened to be his birthday, he invited them to join his private party at a bar that night. Before they went in, Kat gave her 2 friends a stern warning to keep their wits about them and not get drunk, worried that they might blow their cover. It was a rule, however, that she herself would end up breaking before the night was over. On the way home from Fly's birthday party, the team's cover was almost blown when Kat literally bumped into a group of her real-life friends. In a moment of high-wire tension, with Fly watching curiously, she had to think on her feet. She masterfully improvised a story, treating her friends like annoying former clients she was trying to get rid of, a performance so convincing that it completely satisfied Fly's suspicions. Later that night, Fly's curiosity about his new professional crew only grew. He pressed them for details about their past, and Kat gave a vague but menacing answer about having killed 15 people, while Marlon, as usual, launched into a wildly over-the-top fabricated story about running away from home at age 5 and traveling the world. Their eccentric and dangerous personas were becoming more solidified with every lie they told. Their impromptu celebration was interrupted when they were all suddenly summoned to meet the big boss. It was then that the trio realized Fly wasn't the top dog. He was just a lieutenant for a much more powerful and feared criminal named Metcalf. While waiting for the meeting, a nervous Kat got on the wire with Detective Billings, who confirmed their fears. Metcalf was a top-tier player in all of London's dirtiest rackets, from drugs and weapons to human trafficking. The meeting itself was tense. Metcalf had heard about Fly stealing drugs from the Albanian Mafia and was impressed that Kat's crew had managed to clean up the mess by reselling them. Still, he warned Fly to be cautious, reminding him that even though they had successfully handled the legendary Hitman cigar, these new people couldn't be fully trusted just yet. After the meeting, the reality of the world they had stumbled into hit them hard when they saw Metcalf's goons dragging a body out of a back room. Terrified, the trio knew they were in way over their heads, but when they tried to quit, Detective Billings forced them to stay on the mission. At the same time, another detective, a man named Dawes, who was investigating Sager's death, was looking at surveillance photos. He saw pictures of the Albanian Mafia at Fly's headquarters, a shocking sight since the 2 groups were sworn enemies, followed by photos of Kat, Marlon, and Hugh. He came to a completely wrong but logical conclusion. This new unknown trio must be criminal masterminds, powerful enough to have brokered a peace between the 2 warring factions. The team's accidental success earned them a legendary and very dangerous reputation. Their new reputation was immediately put to the test. Impressed by their supposed takedown of Cigar, Fly decided they were the perfect crew to handle another one of his problems. He sent them on a mission to buy a large quantity of drugs from a notoriously violent and unpredictable gangster named K-Lash. This was a serious escalation. K-Lash was so tough that even Fly himself had been badly injured in a past run-in with the gangster. With no way to refuse, the trio set off for what was clearly a much more dangerous assignment than their last one. The meeting with K-Lash went south almost immediately. They arrived at her hideout only to be told that she was completely out of stock. Marlon, falling back on his usual theatrics, tried to play the tough guy, attempting to intimidate K-Lash into complying with their request. But this time, his opponent wasn't some small-time shopkeeper. She was a hardened gang leader who wasn't the least bit impressed by Marlon's nonsense. With his bluff called and his back against the wall, Marlon made a final desperate move. He pulled out a grenade and threatened to blow the whole place up. This only made the situation worse, as K-Lash and her crew just laughed, immediately recognizing that the grenade was a cheap, fake prop. With no cards left to play, the trio had no choice but to make a run for it, escaping another botched mission by the skin of their teeth. After their hasty retreat from K-Lash's attack, the trio tried to escape the building, but its confusing layout had them running in circles, repeatedly ending up back where they started. Just as they were about to be caught, Detective Billings arrived, seemingly to raid the place. His sudden appearance sent the gangsters scattering in fear. But the moment of relief was short-lived. Kat's instincts kicked in, and she realized something was off. Billings had arrived too quickly without any backup, and he seemed more annoyed than relieved that there were no drugs or large sums of money at the scene. It was then that the truth came out. Billings revealed he was a corrupt cop, and that he had been using them as his personal chaos agents, pawns to stir up trouble in the criminal underworld for his own profit. He then blackmailed them, threatening to frame them for the death of the hitman, Sagar, if they didn't continue working for him. Just as Kat was feeling completely hopeless, karma arrived in the form of Fly's deadly henchwoman Shosh. She appeared out of nowhere and executed the corrupt detective on the spot. Shosh explained that they had long suspected a police informant was in their circle but hadn't been able to identify the rat until now. The situation got even more tense when the big boss, Metcalf, who was also present there, found the burner phone Billings used to contact his informant. He immediately tried to dial the number while ordering Kat to show him her phone. In a nail-biting moment, Kat, realizing she was seconds away from being exposed, managed to discreetly remove her phone's battery just before Metcalf could make the call. With one problem solved, a much more gruesome one took its place. To prove their loyalty and that they weren't working with the police, the team was given a new task: to get rid of Billings' body by dismembering it. The trio was horrified. They had stumbled into an accidental death before, but this was a whole other level of dark criminal activity. But with their lives on the line if they refused, they had no choice but to agree. Grimly, with Marlon taking the lead, they completed the unsavory task, bagging up the detective's remains. Shosh told them where to take the body to be buried, but there was a new problem. They had no car. Hugh's only suggestion was to rent some city bikes. The absurd sight of 3 people trying to transport bags of body parts on rental bikes immediately drew the attention of the police. A patrol car, led by the other detective Dawes, spotted them, and a chaotic chase began. In the ensuing panic, the trio accidentally split up, their ineptitude hilariously making them harder to catch as they darted down different streets. Detective Dawes chose to pursue Hugh, chasing him right through the middle of a crowded street market. The chase reached a spectacular and unintentional climax when Hugh's bike brakes failed, sending him flying off a ledge and crashing directly into the river below. The chase ended with Dawes losing his target. Later, the 3 friends were able to reunite, having all managed to escape. But they knew the police would still be patrolling, now on the lookout for 3 suspicious people on bikes. They needed a new set of wheels, and fast. It just so happened that Kat had an invitation to visit her wealthy best friend that night. A new, desperate plan began to form. They were going to steal her friend's luxury car. Kat's plan to steal her friend's car hit an immediate and awkward snag. When she arrived at the luxurious house, she walked right into an intervention. Her worried friends had gathered, along with a hired psychiatrist, to confront her about her supposed depression and the new shady-looking friends she had been hanging out with. While it was deeply embarrassing, the ever-resourceful Kat used the chaotic and emotional scene as the perfect distraction. While she was being counseled, Marlon managed to slip away and nab the car keys. Outside, though, Hugh had his own challenge, awkwardly trying to fend off a curious neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop sniffing the bags containing the detective's body parts. Luckily, Kat and Marlon got out just in time, and the trio sped off. The drive to the disposal site was an uncomfortable one, especially for Hugh, who was forced to lie down in the back of the car amongst the grisly cargo. When they arrived, they found a grim funeral of sorts already in progress. To cover their tracks completely, Shosh, Fly's henchwoman, promptly set their stolen car on fire, much to Kat's dismay, as she had genuinely intended to return it. But even with Billings' body successfully disposed of, their problems were far from over. Back at headquarters, the big boss, Metcalf, was still determined to find the police informant and had his tech team working on cracking the dead detective's phone. To get ahead of this, Kat and Marlon went to the cell phone counter where the phone was being held. Kat, putting on another bravura performance, convinced the clerk she had been sent by Metcalf himself to retrieve the device. While they were on this mission, Hugh couldn't join them because Shosh, in a strange turn of events, had asked him out on a date. It seemed the clumsy, nerdy IT guy had somehow managed to win the heart of the deadly assassin. Meanwhile, Kat and Marlon's plan went south in the most unexpected way. While Kat was upstairs getting the phone, Marlon was waiting downstairs when his old cheesy pizza commercial came on the TV in the shop. The Mafia goons present immediately recognized him, and his cover was instantly blown. A fight broke out, and despite his best efforts, Marlon was quickly overpowered. At the same time, Metcalf's men, who had been lying in wait, ambushed Kat. It turned out the boss had suspected them all along. The entire team was brought before a furious Metcalf. He berated his lieutenant Fly for being so careless and for failing to find a new drug supplier, a failure which was now forcing him into a risky meeting with the Albanian Mafia. For the trio, the judgment was swift. They were traitors, and the consequence was death. Shosh was visibly heartbroken, her crush on Hugh turning to ash. As the execution was being prepared, with the team out of tricks and ready to accept their fate, an unexpected savior emerged. Fly, having finally had enough of Metcalf's abuse and the senseless killing, made his move. He secretly freed the three of them, telling them to keep his betrayal a secret and run abroad to save their lives. A short time later, a disheveled but very much alive Kat, Marlon, and Hugh were at a train station, huddled over a map, and trying to figure out which country they could possibly run to where Metcalf's reach wouldn't find them. But before they could even buy a ticket or catch their breath, they heard the unmistakable sound of approaching sirens. They looked up to find themselves completely surrounded by a swarm of tactical police officers, their brief taste of freedom already over. At the police station, Detective Dawes was initially beaming with pride, thinking he had single-handedly caught the new criminal masterminds who had united the city's warring factions. But after a long and confusing interrogation, he finally realized the truth. Kat, Marlon, and Hugh weren't pros. They were just a bunch of amateurs who had stumbled into a hornet's nest. While they had committed some minor crimes, like stealing a car, it was nothing compared to the fact that they had accidentally gotten closer to dismantling Metcalf's entire operation than his own force had in years. Seeing an opportunity, Dawes made them an offer. Instead of jail time, he wanted them to go back undercover one last time to help him get the evidence needed to put Metcalf away for good. Knowing their cover as elite criminals was already blown with Fly, the trio came up with a new angle. They would now use Fly's mistaken belief that they were undercover cops to scare him into betraying his own boss. The final sting was set to go down during Metcalf's big meeting with the Albanian Mafia. The police had the location wired for sound and video, and Fly's only job was to get his boss to state the monetary value of their illegal transaction on tape. The plan went sideways almost immediately when the Albanians revealed they weren't there for a deal. Their price for the stolen drugs was Fly's life. Back in the surveillance van, the police were content to let the execution happen, just as long as they got their evidence first. But before that could happen, Kat, Marlon, and Hugh burst in to save the day. Armed with nothing more than cheap toy guns and their improv skills, they put on the performance of a lifetime, convincing the heavily armed gangsters that Fly was a protected federal witness and that non-existent snipers were trained on them from every rooftop. Their bluff was so convincing that it completely froze the room. In the middle of this tense standoff, Kat tried to coax the transaction value out of Metcalf, a question that almost blew their cover. Luckily, just as she got him to say the number, the police, having finally recorded the evidence they needed, stormed the place. In the chaos of the raid, Metcalf managed to corner Kat and her friends, ready to take his revenge, but just as he was about to finish them, Fly's fiercely loyal henchwoman, Shosh, appeared out of nowhere and killed the Mafia boss, saving them all. In the aftermath, she calmly took a thick wad of cash from Metcalf's briefcase before disappearing into the night. After the dust settled, Fly finally realized the truth when he heard the cheap, plastic clatter of Marlon's toy gun. The revelation that his life had been saved, not by elite operatives, but by a comedian, a failed actor, and an IT expert left him completely stunned. As a gesture of genuine gratitude for their incredible, albeit accidental help, he gave them a hefty reward from the money Shosh had liberated. The aftermath was a win for everyone. For his own safety, Fly was immediately relocated to Portugal to reunite with his daughter. Detective Dawes, for his role in taking down one of London's biggest criminals, got a major promotion. The adventure also managed to change the lives of the trio for the better. Marlon's newfound confidence landed him the acting roles he had always dreamed of. Hugh, no longer socially awkward, used his share of the money to open the small wine shop he had always wanted. And Kat, she was still teaching comedy. But thanks to the wild stories of her undercover exploits, her improv class was now packed every night with eager new students.